Here we go. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. We're so happy that you're with us this morning, and I can already tell that we are warmed up and awake and ready to go. So, we will be talking this morning about cultivating opportunities for equity in the digital age. Um, I'm Jessica Herring Watson. I'm excited to be here with you this morning with my colleagues, Dr. Donna Wake and Dr. Michael S. Mills. And we're really excited to learn with you over the next couple of hours. Please continue to use the chat if you have questions, comments, things to share with us. We know you're bringing a wealth of expertise as well, so we hope you'll keep that chat working. And as they continue to work us into the content this morning, I'll be watching the chat and making sure I catch your comments.
All right.
Bill,
So,
can you back up a minute, my friend?
say again.
Can you back up a minute, my friend? Hi, I'm Donna Wake.
No.
I teach here at UCA in the MAT program and the middle and secondary level program. Dr. Mill.
Well, I'm in the same department as Dr. Donna Wake. I'm Michael Mills, and I'm excited to be talking with these ladies about equity in the digital age, both with and without technology, because we're kind of living in a unique time in our history. So let me move on. I do want to move on to this because it should come as no surprise to anyone here in the state of Arkansas that our students of color are in a precarious situation. Our students who are mostly low income here in the state, they are also in a precarious situation. But those of you in districts with significant population of our Black students, you already know this, that there are many inequities in our educational system. And unfortunately, I think Donna and Jessica would agree with me, sometimes the burden or the blame sometimes of why these students don't get what they need falls on teachers, when it's really the system itself that doesn't provide what teachers need to educate these students. So when you have one and out of nearly every 2 Black students in our state in a failing school, that's a problem. Especially when you look at, there's only 1 out of every 5 of our Black students who are in an A or B rated school. And you compound that with the fact that if you look at internet access in the entire United States, there's Arkansas right there. You can see where what did we land on? It says burnt sienna, umber.
Yeah, umber.
That's our color.
Yeah, the darker color means the desert in which you live for broadband access. You know, the students not being able to access reliable, consistent, fast internet. And I mean, there's a problem. If you look at the entire United States, this can be overlaid on a map of low income and it'll be the same. But we have a significant problem here in the state of Arkansas.
So we do have just a few data slides that we're going to show you. The real focus of today is giving you tools that will help you kind of bridge those inequities or think about those inequities. But we wanted to set the stage with a little bit of data. So Dr. Mills and I did a study in April, right when we were in the throes of the schools being shut down and AMI, and we asked teachers via a survey, some of you may have responded to it, to let us know to what extent your students from various demographics were able to engage in AMI. And so you can see that even here we have a disproportionality with nearly 70% of the white students able to engage with the remote learning options that we were giving to them at very, in that moment as we were figuring it out. But if you look all the way down the scale to our English language learners, fewer than half of them were able to engage in AMI the way that we were positioning it as we were figuring it out, right? Next slide. So we're just going to run through this really quickly. We also asked teachers to tell us what their concerns were for student ability to engage with AMI. And so this was just an open response question, and we read through all of that and did some coding with it, because we're nerds and we like to do that. I'm a nerd. I'll call myself a nerd, and we like to do that. And
I'm not.
What really struck us in these data were the idea that while lack of technology was really present on all the teachers' minds who responded to the survey, that really the concerns were about the student's home life and that idea of the whole child, like Were they being taken care of? Did they have enough food? What was their social emotional well-being? And then also their motivation to engage remotely when they didn't have a teacher there next to them to support them. And we had some data around teachers' concerns around specific populations, and those tended to be the young children, very like K1, 2, and their abilities to engage, and also English language learners and SPED primarily in those spaces. So I decided to pull one quote. I had a lot of quotes to pull from, but this one really spoke to me, because what we saw schools doing in the spring were kind of buying off the shelf programs to help teachers, but teachers were looking at those programs and saying that those programs really go against everything that we know to be true about good teaching. So we wanted to take that as our call to action, really. Yeah, we know those online programs aren't always aligned with what we know to be good teaching and the best things for our kids. So that really was kind of the seed that started this, where we are today with this presentation. Next, please. Okay, so now what? All right, so the question for today is, how do we promote equity for our students this year, and what models can we look to in supporting all of our students to the best of our abilities? So I'm just going to get on my soapbox very briefly before we start going into all the cool tricks and tools and tips that we're going to share with you. But I do think this is really a moment of opportunity for teachers, if we can find a way to seize it, right? Because we know what's best for our kids. So we have to be present, and we have to build those relationships with our kids. This is an opportunity to really embrace technology integration skills. I don't think we can turn away from the technology now. So I know there are issues with kids having access to the technology, but if we find ourselves in this continued model where we can't physically be in schools, technology, it could be one powerful way. We hope to give you some good ideas around that today. So I think one of the things that we want to talk about today is how to choose your technologies now and get your kids trained up on those technologies now, so that if we do shut down again, that transition for them is seamless, right? They already know how to navigate those spaces. And I want us to think about our opportunity to reposition ourselves as content designers and as facilitators of the information. So not getting packaged stuff off the shelf and then just shoving it out for them, but us as the content designers, and reprioritizing our content, what's really important for us to teach, thinking about higher orders of thinking, thinking about the whole child, thinking about voice and choice and personalized learning. So we may not be able to control issues of access and motivation for our students. We're going to give you some ideas today that we hope help, but what I want us to think about is balancing structure and flexibility and seeking moments of joy with our kids, because I think that's going to be important for us and for our kids, right? So what we're going to talk to you today is about ideas about synchronous and asynchronous blending to support kids, because I know my child who's sitting right here playing some game, I don't know. Like if you need her online at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to get her there, right? So a synchronous model where everybody's online at the same time works perfectly for her. An asynchronous model is something where we allow content to be available to students on their time and their schedule. And I really think that some of the tools we're going to show you today will give you some ideas for kind of selecting and picking and choosing synchronous and asynchronous. And I think we really have to think about students who don't have devices at home. What technologies can we pull that they can use on their phones or their parents' phones? I think the phones are key, because I think a lot of people have the phones. And so if we can find the right technologies that are friendly with the phones, that's going to be one way that we can think about reaching more kids. That's my soapbox. I'm off it. Go, Jessica.
So in building off of what Donna just shared with us, which was amazing, I love that focus on joy, bringing joy to our interactions with our students. I think that's so powerful and should always be central to our work. But if we want to think about really prioritizing our use of bandwidth, I think this graphic is really helpful in thinking about how we're prioritizing our use of students' potentially limited access to the internet. I know I had students in the spring at the college level, freshmen and sophomores, who were doing all of their coursework on their smartphones. And so in some households where there's one shared device, then making sure that we start out in this green zone, low immediacy, low bandwidth, those are going to be those asynchronous activities that don't require video, where students can have access to the information, explore information that we provide to them, but they can do it at their own pace and in their own time. So lots of flexibility here. I'm going to post in the chat the link to the article where I pulled this graphic from. This was created by Daniel Stanford. He's an instructional designer at DePaul University. And the blog post includes specific information about all 4 of these quadrants. But as an instructional designer, he challenges his faculty, his teachers, to start in the green zone and then really be intentional about which activities move students into the yellow, orange, and blue zones. Blue is still asynchronous, right? So low bandwidth on using a Google Doc or some other collaborative document to write with one another. Group chat, still low bandwidth, but high immediacy. So students can interact more frequently with one another. So we're going to look at some different activities and engage in those activities together today that could fit into any of these quadrants, depending on how you use them. All of the activities that we work through together are things that you could do at a student pace. So you could give them to students to complete on their own time, or could be completed synchronously so that everyone's working through the activity together. Obviously today we'll be working synchronously. So in thinking about that, our work in the classroom has never been asynchronous, right? We've always been in community with our students. We've fulfilled so many roles. And so I think for many of us in the spring, when we were making that really abrupt transition into online learning, for many of us as educators, we had to really think about what is our identity. And Donna talked about this a couple of slides ago. Our identity in remote and blended environments really is shifting toward that of designer, right? Designing learning experiences and facilitating those experiences, whether we can be with students in the moment or not, right? We were already filling those roles when we were in the classroom, right? We were already facilitating powerful learning, designing powerful learning opportunity, but it just starts to look a little bit different when we're in an online environment. And I just saw a message, it can feel like this quote, I felt pretty deeply when I read it. I was like, I just really feel like this encapsulates how a lot of people were feeling. So if this resonates with you, if you really felt like you had an experience around your identity as a teacher in the spring and you want to drop some thinking about that in the chat, that's great. But I'll put the whole blog post there that this particular instructor wrote if you want to read it. But I thought this quote really was resonant with what many people were feeling in this spring around school. So today we're going to explore, what is your teacher identity online? What does it look like? How might we facilitate and design learning that's really powerful and joyful for our students while keeping equity in mind? And so that's what we're going to do as we move forward. And in doing that, as we were planning this session, we really thought about this as a bridge, right? As we just said, we were designing and facilitating powerful instruction when we were in the classroom full time. We continued in some cases to have that flexibility to design that instruction in online spaces in the spring. And so we bridged this gap from what does it look like to be with students every day to what does it look like when I don't know if I can be with students every day or even at all in a face-to-face situation. And so these activities are going to help to bridge our practice into digital age teaching, working with digital age learners. And I think we're ready to move into the next slide. This is something that we are particularly passionate about at UCA. We offer several graduate programs to help you build your digital age teaching and learning skills. So if you are in a place where you're thinking about what it might look like to go back to school, learn a little bit more, engage in a professional community, and build your skills, all of these programs are great options for you to explore.
So thank you, Jessica and Donna. I'm hoping that we all have kind of a framework as we go forward with this. topic, because let me tell you, years ago, I taught in the early 90s, and I was not prepared for my first assignment. I figured it out as I went along. And I remember not gaining much from my particular teacher education program. I had to just kind of figure it out, right? And so I opted to do what most people do going into the classroom, and that is teach the way I was taught. And considering I was taught in the 70s and 80s, that was not necessarily the best thing for my students who lived in a different world, right? And I'll never forget getting frustrated at my students for not being able to properly memorize and recite Mark Antony's speech in Julius Caesar. And I remember coming home one day expressing that frustration because, my God, everyone needs to know Shakespeare. Everyone needs to have this understood. And I was talking to my wife about that, and she goes, but why? And she kept asking me, why? Why is that even important? And she opined, as she is wont to do sometimes, and said, I just think that's stupid. And I'm like, how dare you? I have a master's degree in English education. And she goes, yeah, okay. How are your kids responding to that, right? So my point is, I think at that point, I had to recenter my understanding of what teaching was. And it was not about me asking my students to complete a bunch of tasks because somehow I had to do it and then we move on and therefore you're better for it. In many ways, during this time of the pandemic, we are thrown into the same situation. We have amazing teaching going on out there. And in spite of so many other forces that keep teachers from being able to do their job, right? I think in this day and age, we have to recenter ourselves on what's really important. And I'm gonna throw something controversial out here. What's really important for the next 6 months is not the Pythagorean theorem. It is not Shakespeare. It's what really is important is our students' mental health, is our students' well-being, our students knowing that we support them and that we're doing everything we can in spite of all kinds of unprecedented forces, right? And I think if we're going to talk to you today about the what, what are some things that you can do, but we always have to stay centered on that why. And everything has to be centered on what is this doing for those children, especially those children who are underrepresented. So Jessica and I last year, we started brainstorming. She's smiling now because we have been through this. We have this tree in us. This is part of our life now, right?
This tree is us. We have grown with the tree.
That is exactly right. Well, we were trying to nail down the right approach because, our job is to communicate to teacher candidates what to do when you go out in the field and how do you do it right and how do you do it efficiently, because otherwise you can get overwhelmed. Teaching and supporting teachers and supporting children, it's an overwhelming job, right? So we're trying to think, what is the best way we can knuckle this down to something that you can take in every day? So we started thinking about this tree metaphor, right? And Jessica really, she's the one who articulated the best way of how the metaphor can be conveyed. So I don't want to step on her. You always do a good job, Jessica, of explaining all the parts of the tree, and then we'll get into the specifics.
Right. So we use, first of all, the three of us are all former English teachers, so we're so down for a metaphor, and that is where this tree came from. We really thought about this as this tree of knowledge, this tree of learning. And if you think about the way that a tree grows, all parts matter, right? I have to have a strong root system. I have to have a strong foundation of rapport with my kids, of foundational knowledge and understanding of my standards. That then builds into this sturdy trunk, which branches out, and then the leaves continue to feed the roots because they are taking in nutrients from the environment, right? Those leaves of community and collaboration that then feed into that foundation that I built to begin with. So just like the tree grows and nourishes itself and all parts matter, learning is the same way. When I have a strong foundation, it gives me confidence in my ability to work through the content, to do hard things, to learn with other people, collaborate around what I am learning. And then that feeds my desire to learn more, which nourishes that foundation. So we're going to work through the different parts of the tree today. We're going to work through some root-based activities that build rapport, some trunk activities to strengthen and firm up understanding, some branching activities that get students engaging with one another, either synchronously or asynchronously, and then some leaves activity that are going to nourish everything by putting students in contact with authentic audiences.
Thank you, Jessica. What I really like about the evolution of this metaphor is it started off as a tree of knowledge kind of thing, but it eventually became more of a tree that represents the whole child and the whole dynamic of education. So when we look at it and we look at those roots, I'm laughing because, you know, I'm a nerd in the Keynote thing, and I miss my animation, but we wanted to optimize this for Zoom. But as Jessica mentioned, for us, we think the most important aspect of teaching is building rapport with your students, establishing and sustaining relationships. Because, I mean, you can argue with me if you want to, but from my professional experience and my personal experience, I found that students will less remember what you specifically taught them about writing or math or social studies, and more specifically remember you for how you taught them, how you treated them, the opportunities you gave to them, and how you cultivated an environment of growth, right? Of support. And that, I think, is critical to everything else. If we don't have a strong root foundation and we don't establish clear relationships that are rooted in support, then, you know, everything else will be lost along the way, right? So I want to do a little activity. I'm balancing out here. So one of the ways that we do rapport building is to engage in conversations with our students.
And let's get your phones out. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off,
no,
Michael,
please.
but we put the QR code here because Donna talked about the importance of learning with those smartphones, those mobile devices. So whether you're on an iPhone or an Android, you can open your camera, and my dog's on the back of my phone. That's fun. So you can open your camera and scan that QR code. It will take you directly to Menti so that Michael can walk us through this activity together. And I'll post the link in the chat as well so you can click on it if you'd like to take that avenue. Sorry, I did not mean to interrupt. I just wanted to help with the technical piece.
I'm glad you did. Yeah, we want to make sure that you participate in this because we want to talk you through what you'll be doing with students. And look, this involves coworkers too. It involves any kind of group that you're working with, right? So I'm going to stop that share right now. And I'm going to, hello everybody, I'm seeing everybody again. Hello everybody. So let me share again, bow out of that. And I just want to let you know that that code is up here at the top, menti.com, and the code is 800225. And it's just going to ask you a quick little question. And I can see people voting. And here's the piece that I want you to remember, all right? I'm asking you a content question, right? Let's pretend we're in a social studies class. I'm asking you a content question partly to find out what you know, partly to diagnose what I need to teach you over the next instructional unit. That's fine. But what's more important to me, more critical to me, is to have a conversation with students as they're voting, to talk about what we're doing, right? To see what students are doing, to observe them, to find out what students are looking on other students, to find out what they are voting on, see the students who answer fast. That way I can start getting kind of a really good understanding of who my people are. And by my people, that's important because these are your people and we all need to support each other. So we need to know each other, right? And I can tell right now, we have, I think, 67 people in this entire shindig right here. And I can see in the bottom right here that 44 people have voted. That's about 20 people who are like, I really don't know and I don't want to put myself out there. Or I'm still trying to get this QR code to work, right? But this is a good opportunity to slow things down and to have a conversation with students and to kind of get a better idea of what's going on, okay? So by the way, yes, you guys are a really educated bunch because as a matter of fact, yes, those 13 stripes do indeed represent the 13 colonies. Very impressive. Okay, so now we get a little bit harder. What was the last state to enter the Union? This is more like it. I love it when people don't agree because this is when we can talk about it, right? Oh, we've got one person out there saying New Mexico forever, baby. We're going to make sure that New Mexico doesn't get forgotten. For the record, these three that you see here are the last three admitted. I don't know if you can change your vote. Jessica, you're a Menti guru. Can you change your vote?
Nope, you're committed. Once you're in, you're in.
You're locked in, huh? See, that to me always is an interesting dynamic. If I'm using Kahoot or Quiz, which are other options to Menti.com, Mentimeter, this is one tool, right? Kahoot's another tool. Quiz, any others? Socrative, I don't think exists anymore.
It does. It does.
Oh.
And it does have a similar polling feature. It's called Space Race.
Okay.
Students can play. It's very game-based as well.
That's good to know. Well, it's interesting when you can change because then you get to see what kind of dynamic the students have when they start seeing someone, when a majority starts going one way to see if they change what they're going to do. That gives you a lot of insight into the students that you have. Again, the whole purpose of all of this is not necessarily to really get that content knowledge, but really to get to know your students better. And so let's see how you guys did. It was indeed Hawaii.
I miss that one every time I pick Alaska.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, Hawaii and Alaska became states in the same year. One became a state in January and one became a state later in the year. So that would be it. All right, so let's move on to this. Now I'm giving you a chance to express your voice. I want to hear your voice, all right? You're going to enter 3 words. Try to make them words. Try to spell them correctly too. It's not because I'm a high school English teacher and I'm persnickety. It's just to make the word cloud better. Make sure everyone spells the same way. But 3 things that you need to be successful in your job this fall. In the conversation I would have with students right now, like with you guys, let's pretend you're my students at this time, I'd be asking you, are you looking at this from a internal, like things that you need to drive within yourself? Or are these external things that someone else needs to provide for you? And I don't know about you guys, Donna and Jessica, I'm seeing a lot of internal, a lot of teachers, and I'm not surprised, a lot of educators automatically going to this idea that I've got to pull something in from myself. I've got to dig deep. Patience, support, flexibility, those keep coming up. If you're not familiar.
I like that too. Friends, community. And you'll notice Michael has set this so you can enter multiple answers, which is great for kids to not limit them, to say, put it all out there. This is a great social emotional activity as well, to say, how are you feeling? This is our check-in. What words describe the way you're feeling right now?
And if you work with any group of people, a team, if you're a principal or assistant principal, if you're a department chair, whatever, you can use this tool to just get a beat on where people are, and you can leave it open for a while and let people enter it at their own time. This goes back to what Donna was saying of balancing that synchronous, asynchronous piece. And that gives students a lot of flexibility because, some students will have access all the time. I know for a fact that my son will have access anytime that he wants access, and that's no surprise, right? But there are some kids who have to share a device among many in the family, and they have to share the bandwidth among many. So they may have to find a time. So we really need to maximize those asynchronous opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
And if you've
seeing
been
some,
dropping your answers in the chat, I put them in, so they're in the word cloud officially.
oh, thank you, Jessica. So yeah, I'm looking at this is great. Oh, by the way, I'm going to tweet this out today and put the Arkansas politics hashtag on it so our leaders will see what it is. So if you want people in the political community in Arkansas to see it, go ahead and put it on there. And by the way, I put the profanity filter on, so don't bother. So yes, you can put a profanity filter on this. I'm sure some people can be creative, I'm sure, but also you can moderate these too. So if you have a group of students who may be a little less mature, you can moderate and approve one by one. So just know that that's there. I'm seeing a lot of good ones here. So Donna and Jessica, I'm going to ask y'all to pick of these that our participants have shared. What do you think you need and what our teachers, our educators out in the field need? Donna, what you got?
I actually participated. I put that I needed friends and I needed critics. I needed people to criticize my my practice so that I could grow from that, like constructively, not meanly. And that those were the two important things for me. And I needed students. I put students as my number. I needed the students to show up.
True. That's true. Well, you make a good point though, Donna, because a lot of our educators here and across the state, those teaching virtually, it's going to be a challenge to engage those students. They may be on the rolls, but it's going to be, I think it's going to be a real challenge to make sure that we are drawing them in every single day, because I'm afraid that there are going to be some students who are going to be in a situation that's going to be a slippery slope to just bowing out, especially our senior high students. Jessica, what you got?
I like flexibility. I think flexibility and adaptability is all the time a thing that teachers need, but I also think it's particularly important right now. And then related to that, I didn't put this in whenever I participated, but I saw creativity. I think flexibility and creativity are so connected to one another. We have this opportunity to reimagine what school looks like. So while there are a lot of barriers and there are a lot of hard things that don't have solutions, we also have this opportunity to kind of reimagine school. And I think creativity is a big piece of that. And then I like support. We do need support from our friends. Like Donna said, we need our own circle of support, but also support for families and communities and support for our school communities from leadership. So I think support's a great word too.
I look at it also, that support piece. I definitely think emotional support and all of that is critically important, but also feel like educators need to know that they're going to get support from their administrators and those higher up. And my piece of advice for you is sometimes if you feel, like things aren't happening the way that they should be, or you're not getting the support that you need, is to find a couple of co-workers, co-educators who feel the way you do and go together, a unified front, because I think it impresses upon administrators that it's not just one person complaining about this, that, or the other, but when several of you go to the administrator, he or she will understand it's an issue that needs to be addressed, right? Okay, so you notice how, at this point, we took a lot of time to just have a conversation. Conversations with your students are important. And if you're an educator who feels like, well, my students don't know how to engage in a conversation, it's because no one has been in a position where they could teach them how to be in a conversation. And we have many different levels of support, parental support. And I think in many respects that we have to take on that onus, that responsibility to teach our students how to have a good conversation about what they're thinking, what they're feeling, because we need to hear their voice, right? All right, last one here. Again, profanity filter is activated. I'm just teasing. But what question would you like to ask your principal or supervisor regarding equity in your school? Because if we go back in the fall and equity is not the #1 focus on our mind, then we're doing it wrong. We cannot focus on, will my students understand grammar or understand how to do these math problems? Those things are irrelevant next to the idea of, will everyone get that opportunity? Because if we don't address equity, then we're just repeating history. And we're not getting to hear those voices that we never get to hear. And some of these voices that we never get to hear, and some of these voices may be ones that we don't want to hear. But sometimes these voices are the ones who are going to save us in many respects, move us forward in society, right?
Michael, will you open the voting? We can't vote right now.
Is it not? Oh, well, that's weird.
Modify and adjust, friend.
I wonder if I inadvertently hit a keystroke or something.
Oh, we're ready
There it
now.
is.
I was wondering why I wasn't getting anybody's piece in there. Thank y'all for that. These are going to go out on Twitter too. I don't know. You know, that's good. Sometimes we learn from our colleagues, right? That's right. I know the answer to that. And it's not one we want to hear. This is a good general specific question, you know, a general question that should be posed specifically at each school. We know this isn't happening. So this is, the answer to this would be amazing. I've seen several along the lines of this.
Yes, that's what Kay dropped that in the chat as well. What will we do for students who have no connectivity if we go all virtual? So I'm really loving how, if you're having issues with Menti, which that's just par for the course, if we're going to use technology, there we'll have to monitor and adjust, but I love that everyone is monitoring, adjusting, using the chat. That's great.
And you know, this goes to that whole asynchronous piece too. If you leave it open for students, if you don't want students to see what other students have posted, you can set it to moderate, and then you can check them as they go along, and let them have the week to answer questions. And you know, I'm just going to go out there, because this is something that I do with my students. I'm going to ask them for feedback. You know, you may just do one Menti screen of, give me feedback for the class. Sometimes we need to hear what's working and what's not working. We need to be brave and listen to our students and hear what we need to maybe modify, because sometimes we don't have all the answers, and they can guide us to the right ones. Donna, you're teaching a class on diversity and inclusion.
Yes. Currently, I have 25 students.
Yes. Right now, Donna's teaching teacher candidates on this very thing.
On equity, yes.
Yeah. But I mean, how do you think the Black Lives Matter protests and the pandemic are going to impact this fall? If you don't mind me putting you on the spot.
Well, my hope is that people's awareness are raised now about the struggles of students of color and people of color in the society, and that they can position their thinking in terms of supporting those populations more explicitly. It's my hope.
I'm going to share these not just on Twitter, but I'm going to make it like a PDF or something and share it when we share the slides. That way, if you want to take it with you and talk with your educator groups or your administration teams or what have you, because these are all, I mean, not that I have to validate these, but these are valid questions. These need to be answered, right?
We're getting some great questions in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Are y'all able to add those in here?
No, we can only respond once.
Okay. We may add those later.
Yeah, for sure. They're great.
Okay. All right. Well, again, I hope everyone has seen that we evolved this activity from just a simple polling, getting information from students, to an opportunity to hear student voices, because your voice was the voice that we wanted to hear, right? And I think that's critical to establishing and sustaining a positive rapport with students. It's tough because not everyone's going to agree, not everybody's going to do the things the way that we want them to do, but that's part of our own growth, is to bend. You know, we can be bamboo, right? We don't have to break. We can be flexible, but still remain firm in our convictions. But I think in many respects, we need to bend a little bit toward the ones whose voices need to be heard.
Absolutely.
So with that, I'm going to stop that share and I'm going to move it back over. Hello, everybody again. Hello, everybody. I'm going to move back over to our keynote and pass it on to Jessica.
Okay, so from building those roots, we're going to look now at how we firm up understanding by giving students opportunity to engage with content as they're working through content exploration. And for that, we're going to use Nearpod. There are other tools similar to Nearpod that will do what we are going to do. Pear Deck is one that comes to mind immediately. But I really like Nearpod. I know Donna's using it with her students right now, and Michael uses it with his students as well. So I've put the link and the code in the chat, but remember, you can just scan that QR code really quickly to move into Nearpod as well. When you get there on your mobile device, it's going to ask you if you want to download the app or continue to the website. I would suggest you just click continue to the website, because you'll be able to do everything just like you would in the app, but you don't have to wait for that download to happen. So you'll hit continue to website. Then it's going to ask you to enter your name. So you can put your first name if you want to. I always require my students to use their first and last name for accountability purposes. But know that students can put in whatever name they choose. So if you want this to be more anonymous, you could let students use a nickname. But I use it as a participation grade for students' content exploration. So I ask them to use their first and last name. So just some options there. And I will give you just about 30 more seconds, and then I'll move over and share the Nearpod so that we can work through that together.
And I'll say this is a great app for talking about doing learning both synchronously and asynchronously. I'm using it now with my students asynchronously. So this morning when I woke up, I had 25 Nearpods to go look at and score. And it's very exciting to see their thinking that way. And they just did it whenever, up until midnight last night was the goal.
That's how I use it too. And I love looking at their discussions with one another and their response to the slides. So Michael, when you stop sharing, I'll start sharing the Nearpod with everyone.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And I do know I have several students who are only operating in my class from their phone. That's their device. I don't know if it's their only device in this case, but it's their preferred device, and that's the one they're using.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So here we go. I can see, and I'll just show you a little bit about the screen so you can see the slides with me. I have this set to teacher pace, so we're all working through it at the same time. So you'll notice in a minute that I can move you forward in the slides. I can also, as the teacher, see who all is in my slides. So you may notice that everyone over here has a green dot. If there was a red dot, I would know that the student is in the Nearpod, but they are in a different tab, right? So they're not really with me. So I think that's a really helpful little teacher tool just to make sure that everyone is together. So there you go. See, I'm here, but I'm not. Have this open in another tab as well. Okay, so we'll move forward. I can also hide students' names or show students' names. So I'm going to hide them for now. And then I can also jump to a slide. So I just wanted you to see kind of how your controls work here as the teacher. All right, so we're going to start just checking in on familiarity. So I'm going to start the activity. You're seeing the student side on your end, and I'm also showing you what the teacher would see. I think it's nice to be able to have both available to you. I can see each individual student's answer, but also get a sense of the whole group, which is nice. It looks like we're pretty mixed here about who has used a tool like this before and who is seeing this for the first time. You can set a timer on these. I've got a timer set, but you can also turn the timer off.
So I love that we can see this in real time. What I do with my students is I wake up the next morning and I can see the same data. And then when they meet with me in Zoom, I actually show their data to them to drive some of our conversations.
It's a great use of the asynchronous and the synchronous at the same time. So you've got about a minute left to put those answers in there. It's really pretty even so far. We've used these tools or not. We're going to go through some features so you can kind of, I really wanted you to be able to see the interactivity piece, how they can respond to the content and interact with the content. Okay. So you can put content slides in Nearpod. Nearpod's a learning engagement tool. It can be teacher paced or student paced, which we've talked about. But I really love the interactive elements. I think that's what makes it so powerful. You can even embed virtual field trips or virtual reality elements that make learning come to life for students, which I think is pretty darn cool. You can create slides from scratch in Nearpod. You can also upload PDFs of slides, your PowerPoints, Google Slides. So if you have existing content information that you want to use as a starting point in Nearpod, that's one really great feature of this tool, is that you can upload things you already have and then embed those interactive elements between your content area slides. So really taking what you already had and just making it that much more powerful and student-centered. Okay, so we're in VR. So if you want on your phone, you can use your finger and slide around to go explore the Great Barrier Reef for a second. I know I saw some people at their Zoom beach locations. So here's your opportunity to go scuba diving this morning. You can look up at the sky. So I'm moving around on my screen, but you can also move on your own screen to manipulate the VR. Hey, buddy. And they have lots of different places that you can take your students. You can go to Mars or the moon. You can go to the Great Barrier Reef like we are right now. You can go to the top of the Empire State Building. So this is a great way for students to see places that they maybe otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to see. This could happen asynchronously or synchronously and then lead to a conversation among students. We can also go inside a cell. So I'll give you a little time to explore on your own device, check that cell out. You can zoom in and actually go inside the cell and see the different cell parts. If you don't like roller coasters, you might not want to do that because it's a little mind bendy to me personally. But I can zoom all the way in, look at things up close. I can go right through this part of the cell to the inside.
Did you mention there's a library of?
Yes. So there's a whole library of free virtual and augmented reality within Nearpod that you can explore, and it's related to all different content areas. Okay, we'll move you forward again from the 3D. And now we're going to do a group discussion. So this is a collaborate board. I love using these with my students because it gives them an opportunity to engage with one another about the content. So I am going to give you permission to just post with wild abandon. I am not going to approve your posts. So down here at the bottom is where you'll type your response. You'll notice you can also use an image for your response, and I really like that choice when it comes to students representing their knowledge, whether they want to use text or image to do so. So what are some reasons that a tool like this would be useful in your classroom? Happiness, yep, love it. Student engagement, super creative and interactive. And I've got that heart feature on too. So if you want to like a post and say, yes, definitely loving that this adds creativity to the classroom, you can go add those hearts as well. That immediate interactive feedback, absolutely. Engaging. Great, loving it. Take your kids on field trips. I love that piece too. Make something that was static, exploratory. I think the cell, that 3D cell, is a great example of that.
Jessica, you had a question about sharing the Nearpod lesson. I think if people just hang on to the code, they can go to it anytime for 30 days, I think.
You can even go beyond that. So that's a great question. When you set up a Nearpod and get ready to share it, you can choose teacher paced, which is what we're using right now. I'm working you through the slides. Or if you choose student paced, you can choose several different ways to share. You can use a QR code, you can use a link, you can share it directly to Google Classroom if that's the learning management system you're using. And you can also embed it in a website. So you have a lot of different sharing options, and you can set the code to last for any amount of time. So I've shared it for up to 3 or 4 months in a regular semester so that students can go back to it throughout the semester and refer to it later.
So can people go back to this specific one after,
Yes.
like this afternoon? Yes, if they just held on to the code.
Yes, they should be able to. I'll leave it open all day today. So if they want to save anything or screenshot anything, you're welcome to do it. Okay, these are great.
Hey, Jessica.
You can see the globe. That's another, someone talked about the globe theater. They do have a 3D model of the globe in here. Yes, Michael, sorry.
No, thank you. I see that you have the hide student names and.
Oh, I can show them.
Well, that's why I was going to ask you, is there a reason why we would, like, I guess if we're just getting something that students don't feel like they're not shy about sharing,
Yeah, I always like to think about purpose, and it just depends on who your kids are. Some kids are really shy to share, and they would be much less likely to post if their name is connected to their post. Other kids want that information to be out there. I think it also depends on the type of question you're putting up. So if I were using the quiz feature, I'm probably going to hide student names because I don't want any kind of quiz related score to be connected to a specific student if I'm displaying this on my smart board. But for discussion, absolutely, you could have names there, and then that would give you the opportunity to engage with specific students. I could say, I agree, Holly and Wanda, engagement is a great benefit of this tool. This is great. Okay, I love this. Loving the emojis, the use of photos. So lots of different ways for students to share their thinking here. I can also share this out. So if I wanted to share this on social, a link, or email these responses, I could do that. So I'll put the link. I think I can get the link here,
and
and I'll put it in our chat.
Nearpod is integrated into Google Classroom, Schoology, Canvas, all the major LMS services.
So I'll drop this in the chat so you guys can come back to this in particular if you want to. All right, we're going to move forward again. So here are some benefits, and you guys talked about some of these. It's a great way to formatively assess students. So getting that feedback that helps me to know, here's where I need to make some adjustments. Here's where we're definitely on track. I also like this tool because it helps us create like a walled garden. So we've created this safe space where students can explore a lot of different resources, engage with one another in meaningful conversation, and share their thinking with me and with the class. I did not include this in this particular slide, but you can also embed a website or a document directly into the Nearpod so that students can explore online resources and then move from there into a Collaborate board to talk about what they've learned from that website. So again, giving them this safe space to look at the resources you have curated rather than sending them out into the wide world of the internet is a great way to scaffold those digital citizenship skills as well. Okay, so we're going to use the chat for our turn and talk. So in the chat, if you don't mind, how can we use tools like this to build student-focused instruction, right? So it would be pretty easy for me to just drop in some content area slides that I've already used and walk students through them with this tool, but how can I ensure that I'm making this engaging and interactive? Encouraging that critical thinking. So let's drop that in the chat. And I love Michael brought up the idea of them making their own Nearpod lessons, which is a great idea.
Well,
Yes, asking those critical questions to guide the learning. Rebecca said asking students how they want to explore the core subjects, loving that. Power, giving that power back to student voice. Yeah, I think that anonymous option can be really helpful, especially if you build some norms around how we use that. Oh, I love that. Using this as a way to create a choice board. That's a great idea. Can collaborate with one another and ask questions. Yeah, the use of the Collaborate board would also be really great at the end of a set of slides to ask students for remaining questions. What do you have? What do you still want to know? What's something else we need to explore further? Loving this idea with using mentor texts, Holly. That's great.
John is exactly right. Speaking of that mental health, students need to feel that they belong. And this virtual learning, social distancing, that is going to put
Yeah, very true. And Kelly asked about a choice board. One way I think you could work Nearpod as a choice board situation is you could create a slide at the beginning that says there are 6 activities in the upcoming slides. I want you to pick 3 of them that you're going to engage with. So giving students that choice and voice. You could ask them to do everything, but giving them that autonomy to say, I want to do these 3 options. Because if it's asynchronous, they can move back and forth through the slides at their own pace. So they could look at all the activities and then pick the ones they want to participate in. Julie talked about having students critique documents. Another feature we didn't use that does exist is that students can draw. So if you even want students to annotate by drawing on a document or drawing a diagram, I find that's great for all age learners, but particularly great for early learners to be able to draw their response.
Jessica, I want to point out, and I want to retweet what Donna just said about the choice board. Not all students can show what they know the way that my son can, right? I mean, he can take any kind of standardized test and probably do fine on it, right? Because essentially those tests were designed for someone like him. I think it's critically important, if we're going to be culturally responsive and flexible, that we're going to make sure that we give our students opportunities to choose how to show what they know. We still want them to show what they know, but they may have a much more creative, more insightful way of showing what they know.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Okay, I'm going to move us forward. All right, so now we can share our answer here. I just want you to see what it would look like to enter an answer on Nearpod. So we've shared in the chat. You can even go back up and copy and paste your answer if you want. So again, you could have names displayed, but I can also hide students' names. And this might be a place where I want to hide students' names because I want to remove that risk, that social risk of putting yourself out there for students. Just like I have students in my physical classroom that never want to raise their hand, I have students in my online classroom that probably don't want to raise their hand by having their answer linked to a name. Keep in mind, you don't have to share your teacher's screen with your students in a virtual meeting. So if you were using this in a student-paced way, students wouldn't see this piece. You would just see all their answers. And if you were using it in a teacher-paced way, you could just have your grid up on your Zoom call so that everyone can see one another, but you can see all the responses. I can also share. So when I share, that one response is up and now we can all talk about it together. We could talk about what our choice board, how might a choice board look in Nearpod. You can unshare it and share something else. Yep, 100% agree. I love that access to instant data, knowing where my students are so that I can monitor and adjust. Questioning builds buy-in. I like that idea that it puts that focus on students to participate, working to gain that participation. Safe place to share student answers, loving that.
I think we should note that there's a free version of Nearpod that is really robust, but if you find that you're loving it enough like I did, then it's about $10 a month for unlimited. But I could have just deleted old stuff and kept using the free version.
Mm-hmm. And that's also a place where it might be great to get together with your content area team or your grade level team and advocate to your administration and say, this would be totally worth $10 a month for us to all share an account. Is this something the school could provide for us? Mm-hmm. So I actually build Nearpods in a shared department account and it works great. Every teacher has a folder and we keep all of our content in that one folder. So that's something to consider too, definitely worth advocating for to administration. Okay, I know we haven't all answered, but you answered in the chat. So I'm gonna move us forward at 50% participation. Okay, one last collaborate board. And I use this same with an orientation to teaching class this summer at a high school. So I want you to tell me what's one thing that you are loving about your summer. I think we can all think of things we're not loving about our summer, but I want to know what's something you're loving about your summer. I like to bring that joy to teaching, as Jonna directed us.
Joy.
Sonic, Daily walks. I know I walked my dog this morning. It was really nice. Never ending pajamas. Yeah, we're rocking the yoga pants all the time at my house.
It's been hard to wear fancy pants clothes.
Real clothes.
Jeans.
Spending time
Jeans
with
is
my
high
daughter.
fashion.
Time to read. I got a big stack of books on my desk right now too. Accepting a new job. Congratulations. Virtual PD. Some cooking. I'm loving that. I taught myself to bake bread this summer, and I'm really proud of that. I never would have made time for that before, but I've made homemade pretzels, soft pretzels. I've made some loaves of bread. Puzzles. We've been working a lot of puzzles at my house. I've seen a lot of gardens. I've had a lot of students this summer share about their gardens that they've been growing. These are awesome. So again, we need to make all of the stuff you've ordered online. Being home with my dog, I know I'm sure we all have pets that are real pumped about us being home so much.
Mm-hmm.
Time to prepare for teaching, back deck scenery, canning, loving that. So I think it's important to make space for that joy too, as Donna mentioned at the beginning. We need to have that space for students to tell us what's hard for you right now. What are you struggling with? But also what's going really well? What are you loving right now? So creating that space for social interaction among our students, even when it's not related to our content. Oh yes, I love Strava. I used it this summer. I did a virtual PD and we all did a virtual run as part of the conference, and we used Strava to track our run. So that's a great tip for PE teachers. Okay, I'm gonna quit sharing my screen and throw it back to Michael. That was Nearpod.
Thank you, Jessica. I think that was chock full of good ideas.
I'm watching a kitty cat in one of the thumbnails. So cute.
So, we get that rapport established and get those relationships, and we continue to work on those. And as Jessica showed us, there is a very engaging and interactive way to build content knowledge while increasing that interaction with our students. And as we go further, if we want to continue our tree metaphor, we now want to help students use that content knowledge to branch out, to connect with one another more, and to have a place where eventually those leaves will rest, those leaves that will bring the full-on nourishment to the entire tree. So what we're going to talk about now, and there are many different ways to do this activity that we're going to talk about. It's a collaborative activity. Jessica and I kind of landed on Google Slides because most schools have access to the Google Suite, the G Suite, and Google Slides is pretty easy to use. So I'm going to go in here, and while y'all are pulling that up, I'm gonna pull it up on mine as well.
I'll put this link in the chat for you so you can just click on it.
That's actually going to help me too. Thank you.
Of course. I aim to please.
My chat. Oh, I did the wrong one. It wasn't linked. It didn't link it. That is okay.
Oh, it didn't turn it into a link?
No, that's weird.
How silly.
How dare they? But I think most people are going to use the QR code.
I'm going to try one more time just because I'm intrigued. Nope, nothing. That is so, I'm sorry, everyone.
Sorry. So I'm going to come back over here and share a different screen over here. And I can see there are several of y'all in here. So in an effort to create an opportunity for students to collaborate with one another. It's going to require us to kind of, I think in many respects, teach students how to collaborate with one another. And as Jessica mentioned in the last piece, the whole concept of a walled garden, right? Of where we pretty much structure an activity for students to have a voice and be able to tweak it and be creative and all that, but still provide a template for students, and so that they don't have to build something from scratch. Because a lot of our students, they need a lot of scaffolding to get to where we need them to be. And part of that scaffolding is providing them with a template. Now, I'm going to show you something, and some of y'all, you know, you're going to see this and you're going to say, hey, I can do this. I can go ahead and do this while he's talking. That's fine, but you do not have to do this activity, because we're just not going to have a load of time to do this. But we're going to show you kind of what we're doing and why we're doing it. So I'm clicking here on slide 1, just so you know kind of the premise of how we use Google Slides as a collaborative activity. There's a time whenever I was working with some elementary school students, and I had never really taught a lesson to elementary school students. And God love you if you're an elementary school teacher, because you are God's chosen. I taught high school English, and that was my thing, right? So I had to figure out a way to engage students who are naturally kind of antsy and who needed a lot of focus. So we were doing a lesson on the Native American tribes of Arkansas. And I needed students to get into groups and choose a different Native American tribe with whom to represent, and then a focus, like what did they grow? How did they engage in commerce? What were their customs and what have you? And one way that I was able to do that was create one big Google slide like what you see here. And then I assigned each group to a slide or a couple that they were in charge of filling out. I would have, if you notice, I'm gonna click over here to slide 6. I would create placeholders, just little shapes, you know, see these little shapes here? I just went up here, clicked on a shape, and I found any kind of shape. You can pick whatever you want. And I would create these shapes and tell students essentially what I needed them to do. It's kind of like a digital worksheet in a sense, but you get to add that collaborative piece to it. So in many respects, I was able to guide students to what I needed them to accomplish, but let them articulate the way or voice their understanding in a way that was creative in the way that they saw it. For example, here, you notice that we asked them to put what is a tool that you find very valuable. So this participant went out to the internet, and that's in Google Images, you can find anything, and they just copied and pasted an image over to this slide. This one participant had slide 3. I might say, hey, Paula, you have slide 5, and Elise, you have slide 6, and I would set all that up ahead of time and assign students a specific slide or assign groups specific slides, which brings me to a whole point about group work. I'm a firm believer in teaching kids how to work with one another in some manner of speaking. A lot of students like to work with each other, but I like to keep groups very small. Otherwise, if you have too many, then you have a lot of outside chatter, off-topic discussions, what have you. If you have a group of, say, 3 and give them specific roles, like if you notice here, I had these specific roles here. Hey, someone did not like that and they want to delete it. It's funny. I can assign those roles within that group. Now, some students want to be a lone wolf and they do not want to work in a group. Now, I would always respect that, because some students can get what they need to get done, and then they can kind of interact at their own pace, because not all students interact socially at the same pace. So, you know, I could kind of balance that out. So I might say, Jimmy, you have slide 4, group C, you have slide 5, what have you. So the students would complete what they need to complete on the slide. And for me, what I like about Google Slides is I can go in, I'm watching all of you, I can tell that I have people on different slides here. I can tell someone's on this slide. I can tell someone's on this slide. I can tell that a lot of people are on this slide, right? So if I know I have let's say 10 groups in my class, and I've assigned them each, each person's going to say, okay, I'm going to be the lead, I'm going to log in, and I'm going to do this. I should see one icon on each slide, one icon representing each group, right? Or an individual. If I see a bunch of little icons on a slide, then I know that more than the people who need to be on that slide are on that slide and they need to get off. I can also go into File, and I can go into Version History, and I can see Version History, and I can see what people have done. I can see what they've added, what they changed. I can go back, I can restore it, and so if someone deletes something, I can restore that. But here's the important thing, what we were saying from the get-go on this. This is not one of those assignments that you say, okay, kids, here's your activity, go into your slide, do what I asked you to do, and then do it. This activity requires you to walk around the classroom. It requires you to be having conversations with your students. It requires you to be present and in the moment, right? You have to own that room, and you have to be constantly gauging what students are doing. You can view this on an iPad, you can view this on your phone, you can view this on a Chromebook, you can view it anywhere you need to, or you can walk around you can walk around and see what students are doing, right? You need to do that so students will stay on topic, on task. But also gives you an opportunity to put it in a positive spin of having conversations with students by asking them why they made certain choices that they made, because they're not going to have this. This is a good intro for students to get to know how to use the tool, right? I would encourage you, before you use this tool as something that for a grade or for an actual classroom activity, focus on content, do some activity like this where it's kind of lighthearted. It's just something to see if students can go into a slide, add something, see how they behave, and see what you need to do to modify further, okay?
And that's a great point related to persistence as well. We had somebody early in the chat talk about how quickly students will give up on a tool if it doesn't work immediately, needing that immediate gratification of something going right for them with the tool. So if we create an activity that's really low stakes, high engagement, it creates a space for students to fail forward into being successful with the tool, to tinker without a lot of stress about whether or not it's going to work out. And so that's one way we can really build that persistence with technology that students are going to need going forward.
You know, Jessica, it's been said that FAIL simply stands for first attempt in learning, right?
Yes.
And the second attempt in learning is SAIL. So we just got to keep going. I know, right?
That was great.
That was free of charge.
So, and Michael talked about using this synchronously in a classroom space, but once students gain that confidence, or if you provide really clear procedures in your online spaces, this works great asynchronously as well. It's just about how you build in those structures, assigning students to particular slides, using the slide notes, or actually putting their names on the individual slides is a great way to help students stay on track if they're working asynchronously.
That's right. I like to have the instructions in the LMS, the online space that Jessica was talking about, and I like to repeat the instructions on the actual document. So wherever students go, they can do that. Very good. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing there, and I'm going to share again. I'm just sharing all over the place here, and we move over to Jessica.
Okay, we're gonna give branches and life to our tree with these leaves. So now that we've talked about building that strong foundational knowledge, firming up understanding through interactive content exploration, and then engaging and collaborating with peers to explore the content. We're going to talk about that reflection piece. How do I start to reflect on my own learning, share that with my peers in my classroom, with my teacher, or maybe even with a broader audience? And so the tool we're going to use for this is Flipgrid, and this is actually going to take us into a quick little stretch break because you guys have really been hanging in there for a long time. So if you would, scan the code here to go to Flipgrid. I'll try again to share the Flipgrid link and the code. I really apologize that it was not cooperating with me earlier, but we'll try one more time. Nope. It wants that beginning piece. That's so intense of it.
Does the QR code work?
The QR code should work, but I know we do have some friends that are using the link. There we go. What I really like about Flipgrid is that it is a great asynchronous tool that also leverages video. So whereas we lose some of that human feel in a text-based discussion board, Flipgrid allows us to see one another, but doesn't hold us to the constraint of time. This is great when our students need the flexibility of asynchronous discussion, but it's also really helpful if we want to connect our students with an audience that isn't in our same time zone. So one way that I've used Flipgrid with my students is to connect them with students all over the world to have conversations that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. So this past spring, I had my pre-service teachers connected with a group of pre-service teachers in Israel, and they talked about game-based learning, the value of game-based learning. When I taught high school, I connected my English class, 11th grade English, with a group of students in Ecuador. And they did a play on This American Life from NPR. They wrote and then spoke the story of their experience in their country and shared it with our friends in Ecuador. And then our friends in Ecuador shared a story of their life experience with us. And it was a really powerful way for my students to be able to connect with people that they otherwise maybe would never have had the opportunity to meet. It led to some really powerful learning. So I'm going to stop Michael sharing for just a second and share my screen with you so that you can see our Flipgrid board. And we're going to use this as a tool for reflection. Okay, so you've got a prompt here. You don't have to put yourself in your video if you don't want to have your face in your video. There's a pixelate feature you can use that will make you look fuzzy. You can video your pet and talk over your video of your pet if you want to. But all you have to do to record,
you can add stickers.
You can add stickers.
And if you have a second grader, that's the best thing on earth.
Yes. If you're a college student, that's the best thing on earth. I saw more sticker use when I moved to higher ed than I ever saw in my high school classroom, which is amazing to me. So you'll hit the big green button to record. It's just about to turn over to 11 o'clock, which means we have about a half hour left with each other. So I want us to have a little stretch break. So we're going to take 5 minutes. At 11:05, we'll come back together. And my hope is that this will give you some time to think about what you've learned so far, share a quick takeaway reflection here on the Flipgrid board with us so that we can record our learning with one another, and get some coffee if you need it. So we'll take 5 minutes and then we'll come back together to continue our learning. So I'm going to stop sharing. There you go. Take a few minutes. Stretch if you need to stretch your legs. Stay with us. We've got a little bit more to share with you, but we definitely want you to have an opportunity for a break. Let's pull up. Yay, we've got some videos on Flipgrid. So I'll share my screen one more time just to show you guys where to find that. Thanks for recording, sharing your thinking with us.
I just had a principal from Russellville at one of the elementary schools texting me about a Nearpod troubleshooting thing. And I'm like, are you in our session? She's not even in our session. So I'm like, why are you texting me this? Anyway, so we figured it out.
So here we go. We've got some videos here, and I won't click on them and play them on while they're up on the screen, but note that you can reply to one another. So this is a great opening activity for your students. I always start my course with just an introduction Flipgrid board for my students to meet one another if we're in an online space, and introduce themselves to each other and share things they have in common. And it's a really great way to build community. I have students in a class right now that have never met in person, but they are all playing this, some of them are playing this multiplayer video game together now because they realized that they all played on the Flipgrid board. And so now they're friends outside of class and they're learning together. So I just thought that was a really fun little thing. I also have a office hours Flipgrid board. So there's a QR code on my office door, and if students miss me, they can leave me a video message on Flipgrid to let me know what it is they needed to see me about. It is not set for their videos to automatically get posted. It's moderated. So I can see those videos, but no one else can. So just like you can moderate on the Mentimeter and some of these other tools, you can also use a moderation feature on Flipgrid.
Could I mention something, Jessica? There are, and you may have already said this, but I just want to reemphasize, a lot of my students asked if they can use emoticons or other ways to otherwise keep their faces, their identities hidden from others, and just have their voice, which I think is great because we want our students to feel comfortable sharing, and they can put little stickers over their face, or I tell them to, well, video your cat while you're talking or whatever, you know, just to keep it real.
And we have had a few people mention VoiceThread, which is an oldie but goodie. It's a great option as well, for especially if you want to create content for your students. I think I have an instructor, I'm in grad school right now too. I have an instructor that makes a VoiceThread every Monday just to give us a little update on what we'll be doing during the week and a little preview of the content. So great choice. Okay, we can, Michael, I think I'm off. So if you want to share your screen, we can finish out our time together.
Okay, yeah, we're going to have just a couple of minutes to share just a couple of extra little high-level practices. These are bonuses. Well, I don't know if you can see that. Let me try that again. I don't know if that came out the way I wanted to. There we go. There we go. Donna, you want to start us off? Just
Right.
a quick little rundown.
So I think you all can tell by now that we kind of eat and breathe and live this stuff. We love it, and we love thinking about it. So as we moved through March and April and into the summer, we all just kept connecting with each other about really cool things we saw teachers doing out in the world. So we wanted to share some of those ideas with you because we just thought that what we were seeing was so creative, such a good approach, like problem solving, solutions, good thinking out there that we were seeing other teachers do, that we wanted to highlight a few of those practices as we closed out this session. So I think, Jessica, you actually have the first slide after this one. Yeah.
Yes, so this is another example of giving students choices. I love looking at Jody Deinhammer's work on Twitter. She's a science teacher in the Coppell School District outside of Dallas. And after the spring semester ended, she wanted to continue to give her students opportunities for learning. So she gave them the option of joining a summertime Google Classroom. And lots of students joined. They wanted that community with one another. They wanted that opportunity to engage with her and with their peers. And every week she would post a creativity badge challenge. So students had 4 options. You'll notice these go from very low tech to more high tech. This one was about learning about what the value of being a vegetarian, eating more vegetarian. And this was the little badge they could earn. So she created all of her badges in Keynote, which is similar to other slide deck tools. You could create these badges in Google Slides as well. And students could choose what they wanted to do. And then by the end of the week, they would just submit their option to Google Classroom and then earn their badge. So this one was about vegetarianism. She did another one related to what you would want if you were in charge of your state's health department. What would you want people to know? How would you spread the word about how to stay healthy? So that was a really cool badge they could earn. So I just thought this was a really creative way to give students options that fit their learning needs, but also fit their technology needs. If all they have is a phone to take pictures using the camera, that's still a really powerful learning tool. And if they want to get more high tech and create something really elaborate, they could do that as well.
So my example I wanted to share was my life now is viewed through the lens of my daughter, who is moving from 2nd to 3rd grade. Heads up, Marguerite Van, she's coming. And so I signed her up because I am me for a lot of camps this summer, and the camps handled themselves in very different ways. And it was really interesting to watch how each camp chose to handle itself. One of the camps that she was enrolled in was at the Arkansas Art Center. So these are people who are artists. They're not specifically trained in pedagogy. And I just thought, I wonder how this is going to work, right? Well, how it worked was fascinating. So what they did is they had a morning meeting every Monday. I think it was at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. It wasn't too early. And we all hopped into the morning meeting, and they kind of did just some, how are you doing activities? Because we're talking like to 4th grade here. And then they set the tone for the week. Like, this is going to be our art project for the week, and this is what it's going to look like. And then that was only like a 30-minute little period of time, and not everyone showed up all the time. So, they would record it and send it to us later. But what they would also do is they would actually record the artist who was showing us how to do the art, right? It was usually a 30-minute YouTube link of them actually doing the art project and modeling for us what that would look like. And then we had all week to do the art project, and we had to send our picture in on Friday of the final piece. And then the kids met Friday afternoon for like an hour, so they could each kind of talk about the choices they made and what they did. So there wasn't a lot of demand in terms of the synchronous idea, like we had to be somewhere at a certain time. There was that Monday morning, there was Friday afternoon, and then after the entire rest of the time we were self-paced. So this is Mia. She is a self-portrait that's a collage, and she made all of her own materials, I guess you could call them, all of her own papers to create that image. I think she looks like a tiny businesswoman. I think it's adorable, but I'm probably biased. Right? And I just thought that was a really clever way to handle the fact that not everybody was going to have access at the same time.
That's awesome. Good opportunity. I'm going to stop sharing really quickly. Thank you, Donna, for that. And I'm going to share again because I want to show you a tool that I've fallen in love with. Jessica and I use this for a class that we taught last semester, Edpuzzle. I've only used the free version of this. And if you go to Edpuzzle.
And I use PlayPosit, which is very similar.
I need to play with that one a little bit.
Love it.
What I really like about it is I can upload a video. I can use YouTube or what have you, and I can create little question markers for the students to have to engage with to get credit for watching the video. Instead of saying, okay, I need you to watch this video, and there's really no real way for you to know if they watched the video because they may just kind of skim through or whatever. And on some players, they let you skim through really fast, which will be fine if they can pick it up, but not all students can do that. But if you'll notice in this video, I uploaded this video, we do a thing on the code of ethics. Yay. And then at different points, they have to answer a question that was ostensibly going to be answered by something they had just watched, or it could be an opinion question, a reflection question, what have you. But I like it because it gives students an opportunity to actually show what they know as they go along. So I really, really like that. I might have to play with that PlayPosit, Donna, in the future.
Yeah, you can set it up so that they can't move forward until they answer the question, and it'll tell them like you can build all the different kinds of questions. So it could be multiple choice, it could be poll, it could be open-ended, it could be matching. Like there are a lot of options, but they can't progress in the video until they've at least attempted the question, and then it will tell them if it's not an open-ended question, it will tell them if they're right or not right. So my students are always panicking because I really am looking at the open-ended questions and just that they spent the time in the video, right? So they can get stuff wrong. I'm not really going to bother too much about that, but they're always emailing me, I got that one. It's like, it's okay. It's all right.
Duly noted.
Duly noted. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a few more resources to share with you as we wind this down. Jessica?
So another resource that I am loving this summer and sharing with all the teachers that I talk with and work with is Wide Open School. It's powered by Common Sense Education. I love Common Sense Education. They have so many quality free resources for teachers related to technology in the classroom. What does that look like instructionally and in how I manage my classroom and these resources? And digital citizenship. How do I help my students be responsible, productive individuals online? So you can go to, Michael, will you click on that graphic and it will take them to the website, take us to the website, I believe, hopefully.
Stop the share. Go here. Boom. Got it?
Perfect. So I love that there are resources here for educators or for families. So if Michael clicks, I'm an educator. This is a consortium. So lots of companies have come together to build these resources. We'll click 612, and then you'll notice that they're divided into boxes. So if you want to learn more about social emotional learning, you need resources for digital citizenship, a virtual field trip, electives, content area classes. You can click on it. And then it's divided into resources. So core curriculums and programs, supplementary resources, videos and games, ebooks and podcasts. So lots of different things that you can use. There are also lesson plans available. So if you are looking for a specific lesson that you want to do with your students, facilitate with your students, it will take you to the resource, and then you can look at it from there. So I really find it easy to navigate. I love that there's tools for teachers and then a separate space with tools for parents and families that want to support learning. So I just find it to be really well organized. I found a resource here the other day where it was a lesson plan for helping students analyze their screen time, which was really interesting. They worked through the digital handout and had to go into screen time in their phone and look at where they were spending their time on their phone, how they wanted to maybe change their habits. This is a totally free resource. So Deborah asked if there's a charge. All of this is open access. I love to share free things. I think that's important.
Common Sense is amazing.
Yeah, it's just a really great, it's a nonprofit. They also do a lot of research related to how students are using technology and engaging online. So I'm going to share a specific link with you. They just created a space in Wide Open School for how to set up a virtual classroom, which is something that might be of particular interest to many of you. I know we're looking at going back face to face, but we may end up online again. So that's just something to consider. Okay, so now we're going to start moving into takeaways. We're going to share some takeaways with you, but we would encourage you to also share your takeaways with us. So if you want to put in the chat, what is the one thing you're carrying with you from today as you start to plan instruction for your own students? We would love for you to share that with us in the chat as we talk through some big ideas before we end our time together.
Jessica, I'm going to say, Donna, Jessica, and I are going to share with you 6 takeaways that go back to the why. We've given you a lot of what and how, but we want to go back to the why, our students and you, making sure that you're able to take care of yourself as well as your students. And we're going to just spend less than a minute on each of these 6 takeaways. Then once we're done, we're going to pop the sign-in link in the chat. Please click on that, go through that, and make sure you get credit for this. And within the next day or 2, you'll get your email with the official PD number, okay? Donna? You're muted. There you
So
go.
the tip is to turn your mic on. Okay, don't go it alone. don't go it alone. Find other people who you can partner with. Reach out to people who you know are comfortable doing this stuff. Devise strategies together, right? So I know that I've been getting, I know some of you, and some of you have been privately messaging me in the chat about, would I talk to you later, or would I come to your school? Yeah, yes, absolutely. So find friends to do this work.
For sure, for sure. I would say that if you and I'm gonna go, I know have a mix of educators in this group here. If you're a teacher, I want you to re-examine your course. I want you to really get down to the core of what you need. This is not the time in the next 6 months to focus on all the extras. Right now is a survival time, a focus on our students' mental well health, and we need to make sure that we get to the core of what we need instead of everything that we want, right? Simplify as much as we can. If you're an educator who supports students or teachers, re-examine your job. Understand that you cannot do everything. You cannot solve every problem. You cannot provide every student with what he or she needs, but you can be a good support. But make sure you have realistic expectations of what you can do.
We've talked about this a lot. We want to be organized but flexible. So providing a lot of structure on the front end then gives us the space to be flexible and meet students' needs. So that's a strategy that I try to take when I start to build my own courses is I try to think, how can I break this task down into its component parts in a way where students can walk through a step-by-step. So providing a lot of organization and structure then creates a space where we can have more flexibility in terms of how students engage with the work. So that goes back to thinking asynchronously first, and then being really careful about how we prioritize our synchronous time.
Very good. Donna?
I really kind of want to rename this slide "Space and Grace" because I think it speaks volumes that stress affects our memory, it affects our focus. Our students are going to need more reminders than usual about when assignments are due. They're going to need more reminders about connecting what they already know to what we're trying to do now, and so building those in. So I know I have 25 20-year-olds right now in my class, and I'm just trying to take the line of giving them as much space and grace as possible. If they'll engage with the content and turn it in a week later, I'll take it, because it's more important to me that they are taking the initiative to engage, right, with me and with the content than kind of holding their feet to the fire on any kind of deadline. Now there's going to be a limit to that. At some point I have to turn in grades or we have to move on, but I do have several students I know who are in very difficult personal situations, and I want to be sensitive to that and to help them if I can.
For sure. I would say one of the scariest things that I do, because as a former high school English teacher, I like to control things. I like to have the knowledge ready to give to the students, and they just give it back to me because I had it all figured out. And one of the most important parts of my professional growth was to yield to my students and to request frequent feedback. And it's scary sometimes because it lays you bare, right? More than you already are. But I think in many respects, we need to make sure that we hear from our students on what's working and what's not working, what's going on in their lives, how that impacts what they're doing with our content, with their interaction with others. And I mean, Donna nailed it there with the space and grace. And I think if we preface that to our students and say, look, I'm doing my best and I want to do my best, but I need to hear from you, and work with that collaborative kind of approach, you'll find that kids will be very kind. They can be very kind and they can be very giving. Work from a team, a family perspective.
I will say, not to interject, but I will. I asked my students last week on a Zoom, and I have multiple options for Zoom, so I just want them to check in with me once a week. I had a week where I intentionally asked, what more can I be doing to help you? And one of them looked at me and said, I've never had a teacher ask me that.
Yeah,
so I think
that's really important. I agree. I ask my students, how's it going? Is this working for you? And it makes a big difference, just helping them know their voice matters in how we plan, not just in how they express their learning. That's awesome, Donna.
All right, Jessica?
And that goes into number 6 perfectly. Don't take things personally. If a student is tuned out, if they are not focused on the content, If they tell you this is not working for me, it's not about you. I'm teaching classroom management right now, and we really talk a lot about taking your ego out of your work, right? It's very easy to think, I put a lot into this. I really want it to work for everyone. My intention has been good, but we have to remember that intention does not always translate to impact, right? Our students have real lives outside of the learning they're doing with us, whether that is in a classroom or remotely. And we need to make space for them to work through all of the other pieces of their life that are beyond our classroom. So providing this space for them to learn and come into community with one another, and knowing that when they don't tune in or when they are frustrated, it's not about us, it's about all of the other pieces of their life, including our class, that maybe are making their life hard right now. So I think empathy is a big piece of this. If we can imagine what it is like to be in the shoes of our students, which many of you are talking about in the chat, I think it goes a long way in building a really powerful community with our kids.
Well said. Well said. Well, Melissa's going to drop the sign-in sheet link in the chat here really quickly. And, well, very quickly. Thank you, Melissa. And as you go in there, you know, it's going to take you to a Google form for you to sign in. Make sure you put in, double check your email to make sure that it is correct. We don't want that to bounce back. We want you to be able to get your certificate, which will be in the next day or two. While you're doing that, I just want to remind you that if you are interested in pursuing ideas like this further, for example, we do have a specialist and a master's degree in digital age teaching and learning. We also have many programs in reading and dyslexia, building administrator, and what have you. If you're interested, if someone you know is interested, let us know, and we'll be happy to walk them through what we can offer them. Anything else y'all want to say, Donna, Jessica, to close things out?
Just thank you for joining us. As somebody who has a little person in her life, I really know this is a very stressful time, and we're all in it together.
And thank you for your engagement. This has been, I'm just going to say it, I've done some PD this summer. This group is awesome. Like, I just really appreciate your engagement with us and the way that you went all in. It's clear that you're passionate about your kids and teaching, and that's what we need right now. Hang in there, y'all.
Thank y'all. Y'all go get something to eat.